What is up, guys? December 17th, 2018. Do I already have one person looking at my video? That's crazy. All right, there's quite a few things I want to talk to you guys about. Uh, Number one, MRNS subscriber. I think he's a subscriber. 3000 Trin commented about MRNS in one of the last videos, and we were talking about it. It's considered a penny stock. I think it's like at $3. We'll talk about that one. We'll talk about CEI. That is another famous penny stock that you'll see in a lot of forums. MagneGas has become super popular. As you know, they have like record-breaking people listening into their last quarterly call. The volume has been crazy. It's slowed down a bit, but it's still crazy in comparison to the price. We'll talk about MagneGas too. Talk about E-Trade. I moved to E-Trade, and I'll tell you about my experiences with E-Trade compared to what I've used Robinhood. What I mostly use Robinhood. We'll talk about that, and let's see. But let's dive in. Might talk about a few other things. First of all, the market as an overall. I just wanted to remind you guys that, remember, you hear this a lot. A lot of the 1%ers, a lot of the big name people. I think a lot of people listen to Shark Tank. There's like two guys in Shark Tank, the TV show where people bring in their inventions and they rate them and they say that they'll invest in the company or not. A lot of people like that show. There are two guys in there that are big in the stock market, and to my understanding, I always hear news that they have a lot of their portfolio in cash, just waiting, because you know how it is. The 1%ers, they know what's going on. They have far more capabilities. They have far more information. They have better insight to everything. They're way more in the loop than we will ever be until we get to that status, or until we get those relationships that can help us in that area. I mean, I know that there's definitely insider trades, which is just, it's not fair. I hate those things. Sometimes I should look up like the definition or clarity of insider trades, because you don't know. I mean, if you know somebody that works at Walmart and maybe they're just like a low manager and they're like, oh man, we're having good sales, that might not be considered insider trading, obviously. I wouldn't think. But of course, if you're talking to like a director or somebody in the corporate office and they're like, man, we're going to make this big, merger or this big move, that might be considered insider trade. And just out of principle, if you catch wind of anything like that, it's almost like, man, it's too bad, but you can't really jump in there to buy that company or to use that information, because that's just a leg up. And I know there's got to be a lot of people that are definitely using that to make a lot of money, because the connections that they have. But you never want to deal with anything that's against the law, anything, especially with tax purposes as well. You want to be very, very cautious. Even this year, I'm trying to do my taxes by myself and also go to a professional to do my taxes. I took a couple classes at U. I'm a college dropout, but I went to U of H and I did an entrepreneurship class, and the entrepreneurship department, when I went to U of H, it was about 8 years ago or so. They were ranked like #1 in the nation for entrepreneurship class. The entrepreneurship professor that I had was voted and ranked like the best entrepreneurship professor at U of H. And this was his word. So he was telling us, he's like, so technically you could say that you are in the best entrepreneurship class in the nation. And if it wasn't, man, it's got to be close. I remember he was one of the main reasons why I dropped out of college. I only went to about 10. I only lasted, I should say, 10 different classes. I should have stayed more, but you would sit down in his class and he would talk about, because he started businesses and he talked about, but he mostly, man, he reached out to you and he kind of made you question why you were there, even if he didn't out in the openly ask, what are you guys doing here? The way that he spoke and the passion that he spoke and the lessons that he kind of brought into it, Now that class, we actually learned something. Now, if you're talking about other classes like anthropology or psychology was a pretty good class, but there's just other classes. Anthropology was interesting sometimes, but there's just a lot of BS classes in colleges, and we all know it. But that class, I remember every single time I'm sitting there in the auditorium and he's talking and he's almost making you question about what you want to do. And my feet were moving. It's like I was anxious. I was like, man, what am I doing here? Do I really want this? And I remember I just got up and I left and I never really came back. And maybe it was like it was hard because I left college and I didn't know what my direction is. And to this day, I still don't know. I still don't know. But you definitely got to enjoy the ride because once you get there and once you it's the same thing that I tell single people. Everybody wants to meet that person that they're going to marry. Everybody wants to do that. But you realize you got to remember, you got to put in your head, yeah, sometimes being single it sucks and everything. And I have a couple of friends that are single and they were in a relationship that sucked, but then every now and then they'll text me and be like, I don't know, man, single sucks. And I got to tell them, yes, sometimes it does suck and loneliness sucks. But if you don't take advantage of those adventures, if you don't enjoy the ride, meeting new people and dating new people, if you don't get that, they say out of your system, but if you don't get your fill of that throughout the time, yes, you're going to meet the person you're going to marry, but if you do it too quickly, you're going to miss out. So right now, even when I left that entrepreneurship class, I was even to this day, I'm kind of like wandering, and that's how most people are. That's how most people are. I think people get their degree and they're still questioning on whether or not that they should be there or not. But anyways, all that point was he did tell us one time. He said, "Look, if you're gonna do your taxes, now this is his words. This is his words. If you're gonna do your taxes, just make sure that whether you do them right or you do them wrong, you're consistent." And he said that's the number one thing: consistency. Because I guess what I'm kind of taking at, if it's not consistent, then maybe the IRS picks it up. It's all like, wait a minute. This year he did this, or she did this, and then this year they changed it to this, huh? And then they started taking a look at you. But taxes is definitely one of those things you don't want to mess with, and that's why I'm doing my own taxes, and then I'm going to like a really good. I don't care if I have to pay more. A really good firm or organization or company to help me do my taxes, and of course, it's to get the most back and to not pay as much because they'll tell you a few tricks and what to do and how to file things. But most importantly, it's for IRS purposes because you don't want to have to do something wrong or. And my brother once told me he has an MBA. He said a lot of times it's not because you did it wrong or you did it right. It's just because you didn't know you had to do a certain thing, and then later on you get in trouble for that, and a lot of people were like, man, I didn't even know that I had to do that. And those are the ones situations. So you want to get a professional to help you out. Pay a little more. It saves a lot later on. Taxes is one of those things you never, ever, ever want to mess with. But so let's go back. Okay. MRNS. This is a company that somebody commented on and pretty much asked me to take a look at it. Let me put my old man glasses on. So I got the website right here. I took a look at it, and I did my usual look of what I see, what I look at when I look at penny stock companies. And the things that I always look at when I look at new penny stock companies, number one, I check out their website. And does it look professional? Does it give a lot of information? Does it look like they're actually, doing something? They're selling something. They're giving out. That's the number one. If they don't have a website, man, that's already a red flag for me. I mean, it doesn't mean that they're like a bad company, but that's a huge red flag because nowadays the internet website is everything. Website is more important than your actual building that you're living. You can have a shitty office, but if your website is amazing, obviously it depends on if you're selling. If you're selling online, a website is everything. If you're selling it in all retail and your website is terrible, at least you have. I mean, if your office or place is terrible, at least you have an amazing website. Website is everything. That's the new home. That's the new office for people. So, and MRNS, they look like they have a pretty good website. It's MRNS Pharmaceuticals. Now, I told you, whenever I look at a penny stock too, sometimes I overlook pharmaceuticals. I'm researching new penny stocks, and if it says a pharmaceutical company, I'm like, next. I don't even look at that, because the chances of you picking a good pharmaceutical company is so slim to none. And the chances that even if you pick a good one, that the company is gonna, it's gonna go up, or people are watching it, and the price is gonna go up, is small as well. So you're playing with the lottery. It's to the equivalent. I said this before. It's like you're betting on an altcoin, and you're just hoping that the altcoin that you picked happened to go up. But let's take a look at it. Because I mean, I've seen pharmaceutical companies. The one most impressive one that I saw that even got me looking back at penny stocks is, I saw it. It was on Robinhood, and I got a notification that some pharmaceutical company was like two. No, it was at 0.00002 or some crazy fraction of a cent, and it went up to like $3, and it was considered like something like 10,000%. I was like, oh my god, that's crazy. I've never seen something jump that high. Obviously, stocks have jumped that high, but I've never seen it. So MRNS Pharmaceuticals, for pharmaceutical companies, they're always going to talk about the pipeline, and the pipeline just means that usually a pharmaceutical company has not just one thing going on for medicine, but they have multiple ones. So the really good websites, they'll have just like a cool graph where it's like this medicine, this medicine, this medicine, this medicine, this medicine, and it'll tell you phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This one's barely starting off, or this one's already hopefully getting FDA approval. But like I said it before, with pharmaceutical companies, if you're in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that means nothing to me. That means nothing to me, because what I want to look at, and I use the example of TTPH, I want to know that at least your sales team is out there, and it's trying to get prescriptions filled. Your medicines are in clinics or hospitals. That's what I want to see. And even then, it's still difficult, because you're still competing with other medications. Pharmaceutical companies, there's just so many now. There's just so many. Everyone's trying to get into the pill, and the IV intravenous medicines. There is, because it's so profitable, and they can charge so much for each pill, or for each dose that you take of their medicine. You could just charge so much. So there's a lot of money in it, but there's saturated with competition. With this one, I was taking a look at it. I don't see any of them that are completely ready and taking orders. And so when a pharmaceutical company, to my understanding, is just, if it's just in phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, all it's relying on is investors. That is strictly, sometimes they have money that they started off with, and they'll tell you, they're like, we can last till 2020, or with our money we can last to this. So and once it gets to that close range, sometimes they have to get another loan if they haven't done anything yet. So it's all really a super gamble, If you're in the medical field, and maybe you're the patients that come in, you're just like, man, these medications just not working. We just need some good medication to help us. Then you have a little bit more understanding. Maybe you can see a company out there that's starting, and you actually see that they're doing something good, and it's revolutionary. That's probably a good company that I'll give you that. But if this one, they talk about a drug for anxiety. Let's see here. Mechanism, extensive. Let's see. It's Ghana. Wow, dang it. Any word that has an X in it, that's going to be hard for me. Anti-seizure. So anti-seizure, and I think anti-anxiety. Now, here's the thing with pharmaceutical companies. Now it's becoming, in my opinion, it's becoming super difficult for them. The one reason that it's becoming really difficult for them is because of awareness. People are now aware of side effects for medications, and they absolutely are getting to be afraid of it, because remember, this is the age of Aquarius. For the Earth is in the age of Aquarius. It's enlightened. We are now I'm sounding like one of those people, but with the internet, with YouTube and everything, people are not dumb anymore about medication. Now they're starting to understand that you're taking these anxiety medications, Xanax and stuff. I saw it on the Joe Rogan podcast. It is because there were doctors that came in. It is harder for you to get off of some of these prescription drugs rather than getting out of these, like, super hard criminal drugs, like crack or something like that. It's harder and it's more difficult to get out of these types of drugs for people. There's more side effects to it. There was a few doctors that came on and talked about it. Joe Rogan in his podcast, he talks about it a lot, and I think people are becoming a lot more aware. It used to be, or still is, where you have any situation and you're not happy, they're like, well, you should be happy all the time, and they write you a prescription. They pass it out like candy. But now with awareness, things are changing. And what I think is it's happening is moms and dads, since they are a lot more aware, even though there's just ridiculous amount of people on anti-anxiety medications, ridiculous amount of people. Now that they're becoming a little more aware, and millennials and Generation X, they know a little more. Hopefully they don't jump into the pill, but it's definitely going to sell less and less. And the number two reason also, and it also affects anti-seizure medication, is obviously something different, because if you're having seizures, there's really no option for you to take rather than to take medication. I used to date a girl a few years ago that she used to have seizures, and she had to take medication every single day, even though her seizures were never returned for, it was like 5 years since she had a seizure. She still took those medications every single day. But now even the anti-seizure medication and the anti-anxiety have competition, and that's CBD and just the cannabis industry. I saw a podcast where Jesse the Body Ventura, he was a governor of Minnesota, and he was talking about, he was going through like a really hard time in his life. He was no longer a governor, but he was going through a really hard, and somebody in his family was having seizures just because of just so much craziness that was going on. And all these pills weren't helping. And the one thing that did help his family member, it was something with cannabis. I'm sure it wasn't like, to get high. It was probably like a CBD. But that's helping a lot of people fight anxiety. That's helping a lot of people fall asleep. That's helping a lot of people calm down. And now it's coming out that it's helping people with seizures. So now it has competition. This whole cannabis thing has completely changed everything, because they're now using that as a substitute for all these other things. And you're going to see that a lot more. So we're still in a place where we're crazy about medication and pills and stuff. We're just crazy about it. It's a quick fix, and we love quick fixes. But with more awareness, that's going to change. That's definitely going to change. And just the fact that it's just saturated. These pharmaceutical companies, there's so many of them. There's so much competition. It's just so difficult. And there's, for every single problem, there's tons of drugs that can be prescribed. And it's just a matter of how much does your doctor, probably, my mom was a nurse too. I didn't hear from her, but I would hear from other people that these pharmaceutical companies would come in and they would, like, give the doctors, like, hey, like, we'll buy lunch for you, or we'll do this and we'll do that, and like, try our stuff and try our medication and give samples for us, and they would do that. And I don't know, I've heard stories about that, not from anybody from my family, but when I remember years back, I would hear stories about people working in the medical field where the doctors would even take trips, and it's all about, how much do you like your sales rep? But that's an influence too. It wasn't even how great your product was. So I don't know. The pharmaceutical company, it just scares me. And especially now when we're at a time where the market is just completely terrible, probably one of the best advice that people give out is, right now is definitely a time where you should be just in the sideline. You should be, especially if you're starting off, like I'm starting off too, we should be in the sideline learning what's going on, all these news that comes out, how it's affecting the market, so that later on when when the market goes down all the way and then it starts going back up and we go back towards that trend of a bullish market, and it's basically a huge reset, and it starts. Then if it ever starts peaking again, maybe in 5-6 years, and we start seeing the same news that we see today, then we'll start seeing the signs a little earlier and maybe get out then as well. So MRNS, it's up to you guys, but I don't know. I don't like pharmaceutical companies. I would say no, on my opinion. Now, this is just my opinion. Do your own research. I'm not a financial advisor whatsoever. So, and the stock market's really risky. Another stock that somebody brought up, they commented, they said, what about CEI? So CEI, that's a famous, let me see the exact name of it. CEI is another famous penny stock that's in a lot of the forums, but they did take a tumble. I remember like a month and a half ago, they were at around what they are now. That right now they're at 14 cents. Maybe they were at like 26 cents. But somebody commented in one of the forums, and they were like, it's going to go to 50. It's going to go to 50 tomorrow. And that's what they were commenting. And sure enough, the next day, this guy got lucky, whoever commented, or girl. It went up to like 51. And I hope that person sold. And that's the number one mistake that people do. People always, they have a stock and they're like, it's going to go up. It's going to go up to this level, crazy amount. And it actually does. And then when it does, people are like, oh, it's going to go up even more. It's going to go even more. And then they lose. And then the stock plummets back down and they lose out. They lose out. That's why you always got to have, I always say, you always got to have a love and hate relationship with the stock that you have. You should never fall in love with your stock. You should always see it as something that you will one day just completely dump and not even care about it anymore. Like MagneGas, we talk about MagneGas a lot, but I think we need to have it in our minds where we need to know that one day we're going to dump MagneGas. We're going to, hopefully when it goes up, we're going to sell it, and then we're just going to take it off our watch list, and we're not going to care about it anymore. That's why it's good to have those understand the negative sides of your stock, because whenever it does reach crazy levels and it does jump, you need to have that so you can be like, it's not worth that much, and then you need to sell it, and that's where you make your money. You don't make your money until your stock is in cash, all cash. That's when you made the money. But if you're like, man, my stock is up like 200%, it's crazy and everything. If somebody asks you, are you still invested in it? And you say yes, then you really haven't won. Not until you sell it. It's not until you sell it. Because at any moment, especially penny stocks, plummet right back down, probably even worse than what you have. It can go down, you can go to a negative in no time. I always keep an eye on UQM, and that's an electric motor company. Very fascinating. I think they're obviously competing with Tesla, but Tesla's not really that involved with electric motors that deal with buses. I know that they created one, and I know that they created one with a semi as well, those huge trucks. But they're more about cars. But UQM, it's a good penny stock to take a look at. They have a partnership with China. It's a huge company at China, but the company's actually owned by China. And that's dangerous on one side, because we all know that China is very well known to buy your product, and then what they'll do is they'll duplicate it, or they'll say, like, you could sell it here in China, but you got to give us the blueprints before you come into our market. And then they just duplicate your product. They make it a little better, and it's cheaper for them to make it. And then you lose everything, because they just steal your technology. They do it all the time. So that's what was kind of iffy about UQM. I was looking at it like a year ago. They were dealing with China, and if it was any other country, I'd be like, yeah, that's awesome. But since they're dealing with China, it's kind of scary. The one good thing that they do have is they did try to have a merger. So what they tried to do is China bought out, and they're like 10% owner of UQM. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to do a joint venture. That's why you always see stock on chats and everything. They call it a JV. That's the joint ventures. It's just a short term. They're like, oh, I hope the JV works out. And so they were planning that China was going to own an even bigger stake in UQM, but they had to get approval from the U.S. Some something in the organization. I forgot what the name was, but they have to approve that kind of merger. And so they put it in, and they were hoping that it was going to get approved. In the end, it wasn't approved. It wasn't approved. So since it wasn't approved, and I think that might have to do is because UQM started with a grant that the U.S. gave them. So it's kind of like UQM started with a grant that U.S. gave them, and now they're trying to merge with China's trying to buy a huge, like a large percentage of it. So maybe that was a little, it was a little counter of what the U.S. wanted for them. But it would have been great for the company because China is one of the largest countries that is starting to use electric run buses. And of course, in China, buses are way more abundant than here in the US, because then the population is just a lot larger. So it was going to work out perfect, but in the end they didn't. But they still give the stock holders confidence because they're like, we're still working with them. They were even talking about, they're going to move a part of the company to China, and they still make electric motors for other countries as well. They work with Proterra. That's a California-based company. So that still has a lot of potential. But remember, all these stocks that we talk about, it's still a crappy market. So you can have an amazing company, but a crappy market. So UQM, just keep an eye on it. I think it's a good buy. If it goes into the 80s, I think that's a fantastic buy. Of course, China's having a crappy time right now, but that's gonna turn around. They're a lot farther down that rabbit hole than we are. It would be a lot more. It would be a lot safer if China turns everything around and then this whole trade war gets fixed. Which I don't think that trade war is going to get fixed. I don't think unless they actually agree to at least half of terms that Trump is talking about, it's not going to get fixed. And if I've talked about the trade war and how it actually affects us more than it does them, but it still affects them in my other videos. So go back to the other videos if you want to hear more about that. But CEI, that is a company, and it's Chamber Energy Inc. Somebody commented about that. They asked, what about CEI? That's the one that went up to 51, and now it's crashed down to like 14 cents. I said it in the comment when I responded to him. I don't like it because oil right now is definitely at a bear market. Kramer has said it. Jim Cramer said it. A lot of people know it. It's just they have too much oil out there. Too many people are drilling at the same time, and it's created so much that the price has gone down. Of course, price can always go back up, but it's just taking such a big hit. So you add that the whole fact that there's way too much oil out there, and it's just hurting the oil companies so much that they're taking a hit. Halliburton, Schlumberger, I don't know about BP, but those other companies, they're going down. They're having like their 52-week lows right now. I feel like every other day I see it, Schlumberger 52-week low, Halliburton's reaches 52-week low. There's a good and bad to that, especially for those big companies. And I've seen this before, and I've heard about people talking about this before. So when these oil companies, when it's markets like this, when it's just terrible, you'll see a lot of small penny stock oil companies like Chamber Energy or those. There's another one that I was looking at too that it was like at $1. So I think it was like Kentucky or something. They own just a couple of oil rigs and a couple of rigs in there, a couple of locations, and they're drilling. Maybe they're a penny stock, or maybe they're a private company and they're just doing their own thing. But then they go into a market right now where it's just a terrible market. The prices of oil have plummeted. If it continues on, a lot of these companies will have no choice but to sell. And they sell to the big companies like Schlumberger and possibly like Halliburton. And it's so funny. I was at a bar with my friend last weekend, and I wasn't even friends with them, but I remember somebody on the other side. They were from one of these big companies, and they were talking about this specific thing. They were saying like, all these small companies, they might be selling because of the. I'm like, is that insider trading? I don't know, but I heard them talking about how these large companies, when it's hard times, they buy out the small companies. So that's why it's good when you do own, or when you are when you are a sole owner, or especially a sole owner, or when you're a part or a stockholder of these large companies, they'll buy out all these small companies during bad times, and it's actually better for the large company in the long run because you're eliminating a lot of new potential competition. And whenever the market goes back up and the weather's cleared, I put this in my comment when to the person that commented about CEI, whenever it clears up again, the bigger companies are even stronger than they were when the bad weather started hitting. So there's good and bad to these things too. But right now, a lot of people have lost a lot of money on oil, Schlumberger, and everything. And these penny stock companies, they're probably having a lot harder time than the larger companies because these larger companies have a lot more in reserve. They know how to go through this. They've been doing this probably for a lot longer. It's just they're probably doing a lot of layoffs too to combat it. Like the larger companies, I'm sure the smaller companies are as well, but they got to do what they got to do so that they can turn everything around. It just wasn't what it used to be. And electric is coming back up, and people are still using oil, but people are a lot more fascinated with electricity rather than oil. So that's all I'm going to talk about CEI. I wouldn't. It's so low when you see penny stocks like this. It's at 14 cents. It's so low that even if you have 100 reasons why you should invest in a company stock that's so low, since it's so low, it'll just trick you and it'll go right back. It'll go up. And the same thing goes with these penny stocks that are just so low and they have all these good reasons and then they'll still go down. That's why they say penny stocks are just so erratic. I'm going to have a raffle before I go on vacation. Even though I'm on vacation starting next weekend, I'll still try to do the videos, even though they won't be from my office. I guess you can call this my office. By the way, that desk right there, I found it in the garbage. And I took it out of the garbage and now it's behind me. There's nothing like free. That's how cheap I am. I am my father's child. But I recently opened up an E-Trade account. My initial reaction is I freaking hate it. I freaking hate it. Of course, with a lot of new brokerage, you gotta try it out for a while, and then you realize like, oh, actually I like it better, and this has a little bit more options and everything. But the number one reason why I hate E-Trade is, are you kidding me? It's $7 a trade. $7 a trade. The only reason that I moved to I moved part of my portfolio amount to E-Trade was because E-Trade has a little bit more options and I can trade in pink sheet stocks. That's the only reason. But $7 a trade, that's BS. That's crazy, especially when Robinhood is at zero. Robinhood, hopefully nothing crazy happens to Robinhood, but man, they're going to completely annihilate these other businesses because it's only a matter of time. I think it's only a matter of time with Robinhood. They'll start allowing you to invest in more and more companies, like maybe more discrete companies, more companies that are overseas. Now they're doing, of course, they have cryptocurrency. I know they're just going to widen their abilities even more as time goes on. That CEO, if you ever see interviews with that guy, you would think that some guy's going to come in with a suit and tie and everything. No, he's like a young guy, and he's wearing what looks like a Hawaiian shirt, and he's talking about he has a smirk in his face. Usually, it's because he knows he's like dominating. He knows that he's kicking all these Charles Schwab and E-Trade. It's only a matter of time that Robinhood offers the exact same things that they do with a cheaper ability. And I did do one trade on E-Trade. It just took a little while longer than what I would think Robinhood takes. But we'll see. I'll keep you updated on E-Trade, even though it's just $7. You're kidding me. You're already starting off. You got to make huge buys to justify trades. Like on Robinhood, you can have like $2,000 in it, and you can invest in 17 companies. Split it out. If you try to do that with E-Trade in the same manner, are you kidding me? Like, let's just say it's 20 companies, it's $7 each. What is that, $140? Just in that, I mean, that you're already starting in a giant negative because of it. It's dumb. That's dumb. E-Trade better watch out. These baby boomers are no longer going to be investing or doing trades. They're just going to be relying probably on dividends, or they're going to be taking their money out. And the only thing that's going to be left is millennials, which are now using Robinhood. And now with Robinhood, they're opening up an ability to have a debit card where you can use a debit card, or I don't think it was a credit card. And that's their future goals. So I would imagine that if you have a portfolio and you have whatever money you have in there, can you imagine, like, you don't have to do this whole thing where you have a bank account and then you have Robinhood, where you have to transfer from a bank account to your Robinhood, from your Robinhood to a bank account whenever you need the money. Now you can have everything in Robinhood, and you can use your debit card. And they were saying something like you can get points from it too. And man, if Robinhood was a stock, it would be crazy. I think E-Trade is a stock, but maybe it'll benefit Robinhood to not be a stock. I would just want them to just be privately owned, because maybe that'll be a little better. It won't be that scare that if it dips down, that they won't be able to do as many things. And it's just better right now that if it's private. They're offering a lot of options with Robinhood. I think it's only going to get better. The only bad thing is, with this bear market, it's going to draw people away from stock market. It would be the equivalent of the housing market is going down, and Robinhood is like a company that builds houses. It's going to take. It's not going to be as booming or explode up as it would if we were continuously in a bear market. But maybe that's a little better, because once people start having to sell whatever they have on margin, and remember, what they have on margin is, like, if you have $1,000, you could probably, with your brokerage, if you have it on margin, they'll let you borrow for a little monthly fee. Possibly they'll let you borrow like $5,000, and you can invest in certain safer stocks with $5,000. So instead of just investing that $10,000 that you originally have, now your brokerage allows you to borrow money. So now you can invest $15,000. But once the market keeps going down, and these people that are using margins to invest, it gets to a level where if it goes down far enough, they force you to sell. You either have to put more money into your portfolio from your bank, or you have to sell what you have. And if people have to continuously sell, it'll just create a crazy sale trend, can dip the market as a whole even more. UNFI looks like it seems like it's hitting the bottom. It went all the way down to $10.50, and then it jumped back up. Finally saw like it was some resistance at $10.50, but that thing is crazy. Whenever you're trading, always remember two companies in the future. For like the next 15 years, we always have to remember these two companies. Remember GE and remember UNFI, because GE, I remember my friends were looking at it and it was like at $11, and people were like, oh my God, I think I'm going to jump into that GE. You see how low it is? $11? That's crazy. Well, now it's like at $7 and something cents. So it's like, just when you thought like, wow, it cannot get any lower, it goes way lower than what you thought. UNFI, I mean, that thing shocked me. And that's an awesome, I think I lost like $5,000 in UNFI because of it. I took it out, obviously, but I could have lost way more. But I'm almost glad it happened. Be glad when you lose the money too, because there's got to be a lesson in it. And the lesson for me was, man, that falling knife, just when you think you caught it, these in bad times, in this towards a bear market that we're going to, it can go a lot farther down than what you ever thought. So in the future, for the next 15 years, we always got to remember, have that example. It's all like, ask yourself, wait, is this a GE company? Is this a UNFI? Is this thing going to screw me over? Like, I thought it was a bottom, but is it going to continue on? So that's another thing. And the only thing that can hopefully save you against that is for you to be an expert. I always tell you, for me, it's always been better to invest in just a few companies and be an expert in them, rather than to diversify, especially in this market that's going down, and diversify and not really understand them as a whole. When I say that you need to be an expert in it, I mean that you pretty much clicking on every single SEC filing that they do, and you're checking it out. You're looking at the news, not too deep, but if you see anything crazy like, oh, there's this new insider buy or insider trade, you're reading that and you're understanding it. A lot of those are clickbaits, but every now and then you'll get some valid information on those things. Now, I had a comment about MagneGas, and the comment was, I think it was Derek. Derek, if it's not, whoops, he commented that he thought that they had an investors meeting. I don't remember. Maybe I remember something about it, but I don't know if they did or not. Not 100% confirmed. But I almost want to thank him though, because just out of dumb luck, I took half of it out of MagneGas, and then MagneGas went down like 5%, and then I repurchased when it was a little lower. So whether you were right or whether you were wrong, Derek, because of you kind of made me flinch, and I sold, and then I repurchased at a cheaper price. So thank you for that. But that's just dumb luck. That's not even right now. MagneGas is at 0.259, 259, and we always got to remember MagneGas has to get to $1 before February, but they are not in that much of a rush as much as we are for them to get to $1, because they've done this before. They know that if they don't get to $1, they'll survive. They'll survive off of other people's investments. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully they come out with some good news. It's been a while. I'm surprised we haven't heard how much revenue they made in November. And that's one of those things that we're waiting on. If I was MagneGas, knowing that I had to get to $1, I would strategically place my news in an order that it might help project that to $1. For example, if I was the owner, or if I was management in MagneGas, I would tell them, okay, so let's not put out every single good news as it comes along, because we might have good news today, which bumps the stock up for 10%. And then 2 weeks later, we'll have some good news. And then by that time, the lack of news, it'll make it go back down, and then, bump it up 10%. And so what I would do is I would structure it. If I had good news, I would tell them, hold off. Let's hold off before putting an SEC filing on that, if they could. And let's get another good news, and then maybe another one. So we have 3 in our pocket. When you have 3 in our pocket, I would say, boom, put it out, press release. This happened. And then maybe in the morning. And then when it skyrockets, like an hour or two later, I would put the other good news, so that hopefully that skyrocket, people are, oh my God, it's some more good news. It'll bump that. And then I would strategically wait for it. Like if it starts dipping down at the end of the day, or right before the market's over, boom, the third good news. So I, as like management for MagneGas, so that it can reach that dollar price tag. Because remember, it needs to reach a dollar price tag. If not, the SEC is going to tell them like, hey, you got to do a reverse split, and a reverse split is bad for the companies because it makes it look really, really bad, and tell the investors that they're not doing very good. So I would plan that out to just try my best to get that price to $1. And it has to stay for $1. I think it's 3 days. So that's going to be a difficult task, especially since we're in December. The longer it's going, the less likely it looks like they're going to do it. So keep that in mind, so that when we get to January or February, those other investors are going to have that in their mind as well, and they might jump ship a little before that press release where they say, hey, we're going to have to do a reverse split. So that's I have a raffle. I'm thinking this Friday we'll have a raffle. Give out some silver, maybe a silver coin to the subscribers and the people that have commented. Now remember, if you are a subscriber and you have it that nobody can see what you're subscribed to, I don't know that you're subscribed to me. I just see a number that you're subscribed. But if you make it public, then I know, and I can put your name in the drawing. And I like giving stuff away. So UQM, keep it on your watch list. UNFI, it's a good learning process to kind of watch it, see a resistance level, see when it's turning around, look at it 5 years ago and see what it has been. Let that scare you. Let that sink in to see how far a stock can go down. MRNS, I'll keep an eye on it. It might go up, might go down, but I don't like pharmaceutical companies. And another company that you guys should just do a little bit of research so you can kind of understand pharmaceutical companies. A pharmaceutical company, and I've said this before, that's in a good position is TTPH. TTPH is already trying to get prescriptions filled. The only bad thing about TTPH Tetraphase Pharmaceuticals, is that their medication is through IV, and IV is like wah wah compared to pills. It just seems that there's more money in pill form medication rather than IV, and right now they only have IV. So I think that's it. Cannabis stocks, of course, they're going down because the market is going down, but it's just the more and more that states approve it, the better it's looking for them. I don't like the cannabis stocks that they're at a negative. They're at a negative, and they're like at $30, $100 and stuff, and they're not in the green. Like every quarterly call, they're in the negative. I don't like stocks like that. I know sometimes it's like a Tesla. Tesla's in the negative for a long time, and Netflix, they're not in the negative, but as much as they borrow money, as much as they spend, sometimes you're like, man, they should be in a negative. But what big companies will do, and not a lot of companies are successful at this. You got to be careful. You got to spend money to make money. For about, I would say 3% of companies, that applies to them because they just want to grow, 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 grow. So they're in the negative quite a bit, but they're just continuously growing. I would think that only works for like 3% of companies. Other companies, they need to stop spending and just make money for a while and use that to grow. Otherwise, they can be boggled down with so much debt that they can't handle it. They can't handle it. But that's it for today. Good luck, guys. I love you. Like the videos. If you do, if you don't, just comment. I'll change it. If you're looking at a stock that you're interested in, and maybe you want all of us to take a look at it, even people don't comment. Trust me, people are taking a look at it. People are and if sometimes they'll save you. They'll put a comment on there and they'll say, "Hey, did you know about this? Did you know?" Good example is Joseph. Joseph commented. I don't know how in the world he knew this, but he commented that MagneGas won an award, and it was a few hours before they filed the SEC press release. And I don't know how in the world he found that. So sometimes you get lucky and people find out about things a little quicker, and it'll benefit you in your trades. I still hold that side where being in the sideline is so much better. Have at least like 90% of your portfolio in cash. But I know how it is. Somebody else commented about this. They want to play. They want to be in it. And I am in the same way. I'm the same way. It's hard being in the silent. It's hard having that patience. You always want to find that. You always want to find that bull market somewhere. You always want to be that 1%er that's like, oh, found it there. That's that company. All the other companies went down, but this one went up. But just look how that sounds. Just listen to how that sounds. Like that just means the chances of you finding that it's just so slim. The chances of me finding that, it's so slim. So let's just keep that in mind when we put our buy orders in. But do your own research. This is not financial advice. It's the stock market is just really risky. Just take this as entertainment purposes only. Hopefully you'll hear a stock and maybe you learn from it so that when you do invest, it'll help you out in the future. Thanks, guys.